I was on Reddit yesterday answering some real estate questions, and somebody brought up escalation clauses because they had just lost out on a house purchase and their contract had an escalation provision. So, for anybody who doesn't know, an escalation clause basically says I'll offer X dollars for the property, but if another buyer comes in higher, I'm willing to increase my offer up to, let's say, X dollars plus some fixed amount. In the case above, the offer was $500,000 with an escalation clause up to $525,000. So, using the escalation provision, you're essentially telling the seller, here's my number today, but I might be willing to go higher only if I have to. So, in some parts of the country, escalation clauses are pretty common, but here in California, especially here in San Francisco, they are not common at all. But I will admit, I've written offers in the past with escalation clauses, and I've been on the seller side where I've received escalation clauses in a contract, so they do exist. It's just, it's not typical in this area. And using terms that are not typical can be challenging, to say the least. I say this because it's important for buyers to understand how sellers process a real estate offer with an escalation clause attached. When sellers receive an offer on a property, they are trying to sell. They're not just looking at the highest possible return. They're trying to figure out which buyer actually feels committed to the transaction and has the highest likelihood of successfully closing escrow. Of course, the net proceeds are an important factor, maybe the most important factor, but successfully closing is certainly an important situation as well. So, in the example again, one buyer offers $500,000 with an escalation clause up to $525,000, and buyer number two comes in $520,000 straight. From the seller's perspective, that second buyer feels more direct and has more commitment to the purchase of the house. Why? They're putting their number on the table immediately and saying, this is the best contract we can give towards this house. Now, of course, that may not be true, but the seller is basing his response on how the contract is presented. In this case, an escalation clause can sometimes feel a little tentative, kind of like, well, maybe I'll go higher, again, only if I have to. Even if that's not the buyer's intention, it's often how it comes across emotionally in a negotiation. As you know, negotiations are emotional. And what ends up happening a lot of the time is the seller just takes the clean offer. They don't go back with a multiple counter. They don't ask for the highest and best. They just move forward with the buyer who presented a better contract. And that is exactly what happened to the person on Reddit. They assumed they'd get another opportunity because technically, their escalation clause went higher, but the seller never came back to them. Instead, the house just went to someone else. So when I talk to my buyer clients, I always encourage them to think about how their offer feels from the other side of the table. Sellers want confidence. They want simplicity. They want a buyer who's motivated to purchase for a fair price and will close successfully with minimal issues during escrow. So if you truly want the house, there is value in presenting a clean, straightforward offer that reflects your desire to own that home. Because sellers and their seller agents, they pay very close attention to motivation, especially in a competitive market. And sometimes the buyer who looks the easiest to work with wins, even when they're not technically offering the absolute highest number possible. Food for thought.